Good morning and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, Housing is now called to order. For the record, today is Monday, May 17, Tuesday. Correct? Tuesday, right? Yeah. Okay. Tuesday the 12th. April 12th, 2021. And the time now is 9:02. Notice for this budget hearing were disseminated via email. First public notice was given out on April 4th. Second notice on April 8th. Committee will now hear Bill 276-36 COR, Committee on Rules, by request of the I Maga'hågan Guåhan and the Governor of Guam, in accordance with the Organic Act of Guam, an act of making appropriation for the operation of the executive branch of the Government of Guam for fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023. Making other appropriations and establishing miscellaneous and administrative provisions relative to the University of Guam. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this morning. We have the Oversight Chair of University of Guam, Senator Amanda Shelton. We have Senator Tony Ada, and we have Senator Tello Taitigui. General rules of this budget hearing shall be as those testifying on Bill 276-36 COR relative to the University of Guam are invited to the panel. We have the President, Vice Presidents, and then I'll have the President introduce them when we get to that point, all right? Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my letter staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. But Dr. Christ will allow you as much time as you need, all right? Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions or for additional testimony as may be desired by members of the committee. Question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the budget hearing. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and that you speak into the microphone. Other questions may be submitted to the committee for submission to the agency or department for responses. Please state your name and your title for the record. At this time, I ask the panel to please rise and for our sergeant arms to swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, you will affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes. Mr. Chair, during the oath, you may proceed.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. I'll now ask Dr. Christ, the President of the University of Guam, to please introduce the staff that you have brought along, and then we will begin with you, sir.
Situt Mahasi, Mr. Chairman and honorable senators, happy to introduce the panel. I'll go from your left to right. So we'll begin with Mark Duarte, the Director of Financial Aid and the Student Financial Aid Program. Then we have Dr. Anita Borja Enriquez, the Senior Vice President and Provost of the university. Then we have Mr. Randy Wiegand, the Vice President for Administration and Finance. And then we have Ms. Lisa Provido, the chairperson of the Board of Regents. And I think we will be having one more, which will be Dr. Rachel Leon Guerrero, the Vice Provost for Research and Sponsored Programs at the university, and also the agent for the Guam Cancer Trust Fund.
All right, sir, go ahead and begin your presentation on the budget of the University of Guam.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to begin by asking the chairperson of the Board of Regents, Lisa Provido, to provide her opening statement.
Thank you, Dr. Christ. Good morning to the Honorable Senator Agustin, the Honorable Amanda Shelton, senators. Thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony on behalf of the University of Guam Board of Regents on UOG's fiscal year 2023 budget. We want to express our gratitude to the legislature for your continued support of our university, for ensuring monthly appropriations are met, for making provisions for additional funding for student financial aid, for collaborating with us to solve funding needs caused by the rising costs of construction as we improve our campus. The Board of Regents represents our island community at the university, many of whom are also alumni, merit and Protect scholarship recipients with close ties and are the university's greatest advocates. There's no question that the university has been and continues to be a valuable resource in advancing our island's growth and development. Our mission of Ina Descubre Setbe has been re-energized during the pandemic. A successful University of Guam is an economic engine helping us recover from the pandemic. It develops and establishes our professional workforce. It explains issues and solves problems affecting our communities. It engages and integrates with our everyday lives. This year, the university is requesting for general operations, $33.9 million, student financial assistance programs, $4.2 million, capital improvements fund, $1.6 million, continuing special appropriations, $1.6 million. Fiscal year 2023 is a critical year for the university, which will be undergoing an accreditation review from the Western Association of Schools and Colleges in 2024. Fiscal year 2023 and earlier years will be the years they review to determine the level of support the university receives from the community. Your support for our budget request will ensure UOG will be able to meet the needs of its students, its federal requirements, community needs, and WASC, as we enter this critical period for accreditation review and demonstrate that the government of Guam is committed to funding the University of Guam and is vested in its future. Biba, UOG.
Biba. Situs Masi, Madam Chairperson. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, sir.
Dr. Christ, before you begin, have the Sergeant Arms ask
Oh, yes.
your staff, you can introduce your staff.
So this is Dr. Rachel Leon Guerrero, the Vice Provost of the University for Research and Sponsored Programs and the agent for the Guam Cancer Trust Fund.
All right, thank you. Miss, could you please rise, and you're going to be sworn in so that when you start to speak, you're covered.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information that you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes. Mr. Chair, you may proceed. She's under oath.
Thank you, Sergeant Arms. Dr. Christ, now you may begin your opening for the budget. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And I really would like to begin with thanks to you, Mr. Chairman, and all the legislature for the high level of engagement that you've demonstrated, the participation that you've all had in so many of the university's activities, and most recently in our, I think, very highly successful Island Sustainability Conference this last week, and for your support for really major initiatives like the Guam Green Growth, the G3 initiative. And you've also provided so much support for our partnerships to cope with the pandemic, partnerships to support economic diversification and our effort to come out of the recession caused by the pandemic, your partnerships to solve problems from water supply to aquaculture to geriatrics to cancer research and services to aviation initiatives to disability services to the promotion of Chamorro language and culture. Thank you, too, for the legislation that has allowed us to have really steady allotments, so the arrangement for the allotments of your appropriation to be so steady. We're really grateful to you for that, and grateful for Director Ed Byrne and his staff for making that possible. It really makes a difference for our operations. Thanks, too, for your 21st Century Bill. That's the amendment to our charter that allows us to engage in public-private partnerships, and you'll hear a bit more about new ones that we're entering into for under that law. Also, it allows for a new category of employee for professional technical employees. It also allows us to expand student employment, and it supports our effort to become a full institutional C-grant university. Also, thank you for your new investments in student financial aid program. That's really important to our students and to our island, and I'm grateful for your support for that. And also for your support for capital improvements that we're making at the university. For the first time in over 15 years, we're making significant investments in capital improvements for our engineering annex, the Student Success Center, the new building for Weary, and a big expansion to our nursing facility. And all these help us attract and leverage over $30 million in grants and loans. So thank you very much for the support for that. And thanks to support from you senators, we're embarking on several projects to expand our nursing program and reduce dependency on our expensive travel nurses by building a new 12,000 square foot facility. This will add to our new CNA, that's the Certified Nursing Assistant Program, and the 45% increase in nursing graduates at next month's commencement. Also, your help is helping us to graduate a steady supply of engineers from our School of Engineering and to keep more brains and our people and our money in Guam. And also the help for building the School of Engineering building will strengthen that program and help us with the ABET accreditation. Also, your help is helping us build a new WERI building with expanded water testing to reduce costs for local builders and maintain the quality of our vital water supply. And also, you're helping us to replace the Student Success Center to provide more wraparound support and advisement for students and to keep UOG affordable and to continue to retain and graduate more students. Also, you're helping, thanks to your help, we're garnering external recognition of the university and its excellence. So we've now been added to the U.S. News College Guide, and we've been especially noted for our ability to help with social mobility, for advancing first-generation students and students from modest financial backgrounds. We've also become a military-friendly campus, and I'd like to point out that Guam has a very high number of veterans with GI Bill eligibility, and quite a lot of that eligibility is not being used. So we'd like to be able to encourage our GI Bill eligible veterans to use it in school and training. Also, we've garnered recently 18 national awards for communications, for websites, for the strategic plan, and for the research report. And also, I mentioned the Guam Green Growth Initiative earlier, so UOG's participation in that as a partnership has earned the Award for Excellence in Innovation from the National American Association for State Colleges and Universities. And many of our students, this perhaps is one of the best ways that we gauge how well we do, many of our students are going on to first-class graduate and professional programs, and they're reporting that they're fully prepared for the challenges they face. In our budget request, we're asking for really what we need. We need funding for the UOG appropriation at this level, and that if we can get this level of funding, this will allow us to help students get the courses they need to complete degrees on time. It'll help us ensure that our programs cover all the needed disciplines and subjects, and it will help ensure that UOG continues to attract graduates from all the high schools of Guam, both public and private. It'll help us to keep more of Guam's brains in Guam. It'll help us contribute more than $350 million to Guam's economy and more than $78 million in annual tax revenues to Gov Guam. And it'll also help us offer new programs and activities, including new graduate programs at the School of Education, anticipating a specialist degree in education and a doctorate of education. Also, it'll help us support up to 300 students in the School of Engineering, providing highly trained professional engineers to our local construction projects and other things. It'll also help us advance our Island Wisdom programs and our diversity and inclusion initiatives to be a more welcoming and inclusive academic community. And as I said before, it'll help us to add more nursing students and other critical needs specialties thanks to new and improved facilities. Now I have just 3 slides for you. So the first one is the main budget, and the Chairperson Pravito provided this rundown, but here you have it in slide form. $33.9 million is the request for our general operations budget, $4.2 million for the student financial assistance programs, $1.6 million for the Capital Improvements Fund, $1.6 million for continuing special appropriations for WERI, the Sea Grant Program, the Guam Green Growth Initiative, and the Aquaculture Hatchery. Thanks for your attention to ensuring that special programs are separate and distinct from the main foundational budget. It's very important to us to separate those two, but thank you for the support for both of those as separate entities. And this main budget also helps us to be the natural choice of young people of Guam to go to college. The next slide is our student financial aid program budget. So thanks to all of you, senators, for the additional $500,000 in this past year. Thanks to that and other support, we're graduating 32 nurses next month, which is up 45% over the previous year. We're also funding social work students and pro-tech students for the first time in a number of years. So thank you for that support, making that possible. The investments in the student financial aid budget and in UOG generally will help counter the brain drain and the decline in our population that was demonstrated in the 2020 census. And as you know, students tend to get jobs wherever they go to college. It just makes sense. They're there, they have internships, they have access to jobs, and they tend to stay there. So if we want more people to stay in Guam, we need more students to pursue their college education at UOG. And they'll help us create more opportunity for all of us in our economy and our society. And my third slide is the rundown of the American Rescue Plan and the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund, and all of that going back to the CARES Act. And so we have 14.4 million total direct aid to our students, and you see the split there. So student share is 10.1 total in direct student aid and need-based awards, and then up to $4,000 in direct grant aid provided to registered students over each of 5 semesters. The UOG CARES Emergency Grant was a special fund created to provide $2.24 million in need-based funding to over 1,700 students in academic year 21-22. So that was the directed student share from those various rescue plans. There was also the institutional share, and this has really helped float us, as so many agencies of the government have been able to hold on during this tough time thanks to these rescue funds. So the institutional share is $13.2 million. $3.2 million of that of the institution's share was used for rebates and reimbursements for tuition and student fees and additional student aid grants. This is fairly unusual in the national environment. Very few institutions used any of their directed institutional aid for adding anything for the students. So I think that was a particularly notable thing for UOG, and it comes out of our college affordability initiative that Dr. Enriquez has been leading. It's also funded our move to fully online, so it's actually advanced some of our goals in our strategic plan, and our COVID-19 mitigation for health and safety, which has been unusually successful on campus with very limited on-campus, in-classroom transmission. So we're very proud of that, and thanks to this funding that's helped us to do that. And then it's also provided funding for lost revenue, as so many agencies of the government have had. So thanks again for your support and the support of your predecessors, stretching back 70 years. It was the very first Guam legislature that established the Territorial College of Guam in 1952. And all of us thank you in the 36th Guam legislature for carrying on the support and commitment to higher education in Guam and the whole of the region. So I'm happy to take your questions, and Biba UOG.
Biba. Thank you, Dr. Christ. Just one question on my part. Mm-hmm. You received 3.4 from the governor for the cultural repository. What's the status? Did you receive that or no? Randy's shaking his head. You didn't get the 3.4?
No, so the Guam Cultural Repository is the responsibility of the Department of Chamorro Affairs.
Okay.
And so that funding did not come to us. So.
All right, thank you. I'd ask the oversight chair if you have any questions, and then, ma'am.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Buenas, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the UOG team. Thank you for being here today, and President Christ and Chairperson of the Board of Regents, thank you very much for the presentation today. I appreciate all of the information, and I want to especially thank the team for all of the work that you've done over the last year since we've seen you here for the last budget session, the work with the vaccination clinic, the first graduating class of the engineering program. Congratulations on these great milestones and the awards that you've received, and the strides that you continue to make even through these challenging times. We're very proud of the University of Guam. I wanted to talk a little bit about the 21st century bill that we passed in the last term. You did make mention of it, President Christ. That was Public Law 35-114. And this allowed the university to enter into public-private partnerships to generate some different revenue streams, to authorize the university to go into long-term financing. Also, some other points that UOG was able to expand in its charter. And I wanted to know how we've realized some of these benefits over the last 2 years. I know in the last budget hearing, I recall that we discussed how these new initiatives would take time, but in the last year, have we made any progress? Have we seen any benefits that we can further discuss today?
Thank you, Senator Shelton. Yes, so we're very pleased to be pretty far along in the first public-private partnership under this law that you've allowed us now to do. And so this is with Siemens International, the big engineering firm, and this is to develop, the arrangement is to borrow money in order to put in new, more efficient, more energy efficient air conditioning equipment, as well as some water controls, other ways to make the campus more sustainable. And then, so the benefit to us immediately is improved equipment, lifespan, and that sort of thing. And then over a period of time, then it's paid back by the savings in the energy cost. And so we're very pleased to be moving along with that. That'll be the first one that's kind of been the proof of concept for that. We do have another public-private partnership that was allowed under federal rules with the aquaculture facility in Manila, just north of the campus, with Core Seed company. So that gave us a little bit of a practice, and that's doing very well in that plan. But Siemens will be the very next one. And we have some preliminary work on the possibility of a new dormitory. So there's conversation moving along on that. So we're developing the capacity, the experience, knowing what questions to ask to make sure that we do it really well. And then other elements of the law, of course, have allowed us to develop the new category of employee for professional technical employees. And so the manual for that is just about, I think it's going to the board at their next meeting for approval. So.
Okay, great. We look forward to those updates as they move along. Can you tell us how the public-private partnership with Siemens and the updates for air conditioning are tied into the capital improvement projects? We know that there's a little bit of a bump in the budget request, and this has been a big concern for both faculty, staff, and students at the university, with different air conditioning units being down for quite a bit of time, and this is a constant complaint that we've heard. So what can we expect in the coming months for this to be fixed?
So yes, ma'am. So the Siemens element that equipment will start going in once we get to the next phase. So we're steadily going through the phases, and they've been moving very cleanly, so we haven't had any sort of hiccups. We also have been able to improve some of our air conditioning and ventilation systems thanks to some of the funding from the rescue plan. So indoor air quality is becoming a much higher visibility kind of response in the whole world, of course, to COVID, and so we have been able to make some improvements there. So I think the situation is much improved thanks to both of those efforts. But it should be fairly soon, maybe within this calendar year. Yes, this calendar year we anticipate the real heavy work of installing the new, more efficient air conditioning to happen. So. Okay,
and. Is that also part of the reason why contractual services, the budget for that has gone up a little bit? Is the air conditioning a part of that, or is there a bigger capital improvement project tied into the contractual services?
Just in general, FMS was asking for a lot of projects.
Turn on your mic.
Have this one.
Just move the mic closer to you,
Yeah, just close.
Randy.
Yeah, so we just had a lot of the FMS group, Facilities and Management Services, had just put in a lot of requests for projects all over the campus for this year, and so that's what's reflected in the budget.
Okay, I see. And can you discuss some of the issues that you've had with security? I noticed that's another part of the contractual services, an increase in the need for security. So what's been going on? Has it been because there's been a lack of presence at the school due to online classes, or is there another issue that we're faced with?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, during the real lockdown period, we had increased problems with security as so many other facilities of companies and agencies of the government. So we were made more aware of the need for better and more functioning cameras and that sort of thing. So, and also to integrate that system to make it easier to manage. So those are all parts of that. So, but the lockdown really called our attention to that. Also, the building of the Guam Cultural Repository on the campus is also, we haven't had such a big project on campus in many years, so it called attention to the need for additional security. So
I see.
Those are reflected in those budgets, yes.
Okay, and that will be with the same security company that you've had, or are you bringing in another team to do that?
So we have we do periodic evaluation of our contracts, and so I think we're continuing. Yes, we're continuing.
It's out.
It's out. Oh, it's out now. Yes, right for it.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And then can we move on to the financial aid portion of the budget? I'm glad to hear that we are awarding ProTech scholarships. Can we discuss how many have gone out in comparison to how many applications we've received over the last few months?
Good morning.
Good morning, Mark.
We did start advertising our ProTech this semester. We did get 11 applicants, and we approved, as of today, we approved 6 for awarding.
Okay.
So those students have been receiving their notice of award. So they have to return their promissory notes, and then once that's complete, then we start dispersing the funds to those students.
And do you think we're going to be able to award all 11 applicants, or did they not meet all the requirements?
Yeah, there's a couple that didn't meet residency requirements. The rule and the law states that they have to have the 10-year residency. A couple of them did not meet that. Also, the area of study. In this particular year, we're looking at health-related fields, and a couple of them did not meet that criteria for funding.
Okay, and I understand that on the application for the ProTech scholarship, there is a portion there that if you are not applying for one of those categories, healthcare categories, you can try to justify what is your high need area that you're going to be studying. And is that something that you in the financial aid department and the committee that oversees these applications give consideration to?
Right. So it becomes a priority if it's a health field as of now. But if it's not, it's something that we can look at. And if we do have the funds for it, then we eventually would award, given, of course, that the applicant meets all of the other requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. Has there been an influx in any other scholarship, an influx in applications for any other scholarship that you have not been able to award?
Yeah, so social work is the other big one. We held information sessions with the social work class. So we did get 16 that we approved. I think of the 16, there were 19 applications. There's 3 more that we're trying to validate, but as of today, 16 have been approved for funding.
Okay, and that's the only other scholarship?
Yeah, the others we've been awarding, including NTP, Region Scholarship, we've been awarding if they're multi-year awards. So those have still been in our listing of scholarships. That $500,000 that was given to us, additional from the legislature, really helped us in opening the ProTech and those new additional awards for social work, and expanding also the nursing awards to the sophomore level students.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you give us an update on the Regent Scholarship and how that will continue moving forward?
So it will continue to be awarded as long as they've continued to be eligible, because they are awarded as multi-year, and in the budget law, it does call for an exemption for this multi-year scholarships. So as long as they maintain their eligibility, they will still be awarded. Now, students that gain eligibility, then we look at university funds to award those students. And that's a fairly limited number. It's now all of the awardees in this figure at 369, majority of them have been eligible for the awards for multiple years now.
Can you repeat that number, 369?
Now, 369, this is what we awarded from fall and partially this semester as well.
Okay. And how many students on average do we see become eligible, new students become eligible every semester?
I think this semester we saw 35 new students.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much to the team. Mr. Chair, I'll reserve my questions for the next round. Thank you.
All right. Senator Tony Abbott, do you have any questions, sir? And I'd like to also recognize the speaker has joined us. Speaker Teresa Elias is with us this morning. Senator Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome UOG to the Guam Legislature, and thank you for being here to present your budget request for 2023. The Oversight Chair had asked some of the questions that I had intended for you as well. Perhaps maybe then I can just finish up with the other couple of questions that I have. First of all, on the nursing program, congratulations on the 32 graduates that are coming up on that. Do you see a shortage of students applying for the nursing program, or is there a vast amount of students that are applying and you have to turn away some, or are you accommodating all students that are applying for the nursing program?
Thank you, Senator, for that. It's a competitive program, so we generally have quite a few people interested in the program. So maybe Dr. Enriquez might have some more details.
Yes, Manana Sijus. We get a healthy pool of students who apply. As you know, we do have the pre-nursing pipeline, which usually runs roughly about 100 students, and then by the time they have satisfied certain prerequisites for the Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree program, they will then submit their application. There is a very rigorous competitive admissions process, and just to make a correction, Mr. President, last year we had 29. This year we have 32. So we try as much as possible to try to at least accommodate up to, I believe we've gone up to about 40 majors at any given time. So there is a very proactive effort by our Dean of School of Health, Dr. Margaret Hattori Uchima, and certainly the nursing program faculty to try to accommodate the need.
That's great to hear, because as you know, now that we're seeing what's going on locally within our healthcare system, there's much nurses that we can graduate from the program and place them into not just the hospitals, but local clinics in different areas that are looking for nursing here on the island. And as long as we continue to see an increase in the numbers of nurses that are graduating from the program, it just goes to show the type of education and programs that UOG offers and continues to advance our people here on our island. So thank you for that very much. And I hope that you guys will continue. It's not to say that the other professional disciplines are less important, but I think when we look at what we're doing locally and how we struggled this past 2 years with nursing shortages and having traveling nurses come to the island, I think utilizing that money for local nurses versus traveling nurses will greatly enhance what we have here locally. And like you said, President Christ, keeping our local talent here on Guam, and where they graduate is where they're going to keep their home. So thank you for that. The other question I have is, With the American Rescue Plan, the ARP funding that UOG received, were there any hires that were made with that funding at UOG?
Absolutely. So we were very intent to prioritize with the American Rescue Plan funds the continuity of our academic enterprise, which includes ensuring that courses continued, that faculty received all the tools, the training on how to effectively deliver the courses online and not sacrificing on educational quality as well as effective student learning, to ensure as well that we took care of our students and provided the direct student aid that was required. That said, we funded specifically online teaching assistants, making sure that they received the training to assist faculty who were teaching online, ensuring that everyone had the actual subscription to the online delivery vehicle, which was Zoom, and we do have our online learning management system, Moodle, ensuring that everyone was trained in that. Hiring additional part-time staff to assure as well sanitizing, proper sanitizing, safety as well, and other types of assistance that were needed to manage this. So all of these, as you know, are limited term hires for as long as we have the grant received. It has been extended till June of 2023, so this will allow us to manage that continuity of the academic enterprise with those types of positions, including assisting with the IT support.
I see. That's great to hear that that funding will be utilized all the way until June 2023. So no individuals that were hired under ARP are carried on to this current budget request, is there?
Right, they are not included.
So no one's included into, okay. And
Sure.
I'm glad to hear that, because in the initial onset of the ARP funding, we asked that you know, because it's limited funding for a limited term, that, you know, we hope that agencies and departments don't utilize that to hire and then turn around and include it into their budget request for 2023. But I'm glad UOG is thinking ahead and always looking at what budget they have available and funding they have available for that current funding program, and that you guys utilized it wisely and to the best of your ability. So thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, that's the only questions I have. Thank you again.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tello, do you have any questions? And I'd like to also recognize Senator Brown has also joined us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning to my colleagues as well as to the UOG. Strong G. Welcome. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you're doing in preparing this, preparing here for the budget. The information that you provided, I'm glad it wasn't like, you know, super thick, though you probably could have something as, you know, at least 100 pages on the work that you're doing at University of Guam. So I greatly appreciate condensing it. But there is a couple questions that I have with regards. First, this committee chair asked about the repository, and it states that there's an MOU between the University of Guam and the governor's office, not Chamorro Affairs. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. So we actually don't have a physical MOU on the subject, but the governor's decided that the GCR will be the responsibility of the Department of Chamorro Affairs. So our responsibility has been to build and completely support the building of the facility. We anticipate the handover from the builders to Guam will happen in next month, and so it'll be transferred to the Department of Chamorro Affairs.
Okay, so once it's completed, then it'll be transferred. So that was part of the audit report, you know, whether or not UOG will be, you know, opting to take care of the facility or Chamorro Affairs. So no funding whatsoever is going to UOG for the repository.
No, ma'am.
Okay. Going back to the hiring and using the ARPA funding,
has there been, has your agency hired, well, of course, it mentioned the part-time individuals who are limited term, basically, until the time, but has there been any significant pay raises at the University of Guam using any of the ARP funding?
No, any of the emergency funding?
Yeah, ARP funding or any kind of grant funding, actually. Let's start with ARP, probably nothing, you know, but on any kind of major pay raises to the University of Guam individuals working there.
Okay, and are you talking like in the last year or?
Yeah, within the last year.
Yes.
I guess, you know, FY21 and 22.
Okay. Yeah, so in fiscal year 2018,
Well, you don't have to go that far back.
well, that's kind of when it started, is that the board had recognized that salaries were becoming a problem, and so our administrator salaries were tied to a 2002, 2003 survey, and we just had a series of rejections, and it was becoming obvious that that needed to change. So in 2018, they gave the president a 5-year period to implement a more current scale. And so the scale was adopted in 2018, and then he was given 5 years to move to it. And with all the change that was happening at the university, more and more students were, more and more employees, more and more administrators were coming on to the new scale. And so in 2020, the decision was made to try to move the remaining 13 administrators to the new scale. And then in May 20, I guess it was April 2021, the second half of the move was made to get, at that point, 11 remaining administrators onto the new scale. So, yeah, we did have that change. It was, the total value was $175,000 of the two moves to the new scale.
And not appropriated.
And
These changes were made during COVID, 2021 and 2020?
they were, yeah, we were.
Didn't the University of Guam want to hold off on something like that, considering what the, you know, the dire strait we were in at this point, and even with the budget?
Yeah, the way I looked at it is that we were asking our people to step up, and we had the disparate system. And so while we're asking these people to go the extra mile during all the difficulties of COVID, we felt like we could not continue to ask them to continue on getting, you know, being on a lesser pay scale than other administrators at the university. So we felt like if we're asking them to step up and do more, we have to get them on a par with all the other administrators.
Because anyone hired new to the position was on the new scale, so it was mostly people who had been around for quite some time, including in one example of somebody who'd had no change in his salary in 10 years. That's a long time to work at a pretty hard job without any adjustment. And we were able to do that funding through non-appropriated funds, so we weren't using either the relief funds or the, operational funds.
That is my next question. With regards to non-appropriated funds, I didn't see a graph or anything here showing us how you're utilizing that non-appropriated funds at the University of Guam. Can you give me just a brief on how much you receive in non-appropriated funds at the University of Guam, and where's that money going?
Yes, ma'am. So a good example would be our federal grants. So one remarkable thing about the university over the past 20 years or so is the attraction of really significant federal research funds. And so we're now at about $17 million a year in federal research funds, and that's supporting 179 federally funded jobs. So that's a significant contribution. Not only is the research important to our region, developing island wisdom, understanding our environment, coping with climate change, all those kinds of things, but it's also a big boost to us economically to have that. That's an example. We also, tuition is another non-appropriated fund, so we use that for a number of things, including support for the research enterprise, for teaching. We've used, of course, a lot of the rescue funds for online training and those kinds of things. That's probably the biggest kind of addition we've had recently, is adding to the capacity to teach more. So some of that had been funded through non-appropriate
How much is that? I'm
funds.
sorry to interrupt, but how much in tuition do you receive yearly?
I think it's about 14.
The net is about 14 million, yeah.
14 million. Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes,
Go
of
ahead.
course. And then another example would be a really great new thing is WERI, the Water and Environmental Research Institute, has developed a full capacity water testing lab, and so they're now able to do all of every construction project has serious water testing responsibilities, and so it can cost $20,000 for a sample to be sent off island to be tested, and so we're doing it for a fraction of that price. And I think in the past year, WERI was bringing in $250,000 of non-appropriated funds, obviously, from that activity, while also providing a direct benefit to our local companies and, and all of the building projects that are going on across the island. So that'd be another example. Another big one is our global learning and engagement, known also as PIP, the Professional International Programs. Particularly before the pandemic, Carlos Taitano, the director, was bringing in 6,000 students a year for our English Adventure program. And they do a lot of other things, like they support the Island Sustainability Conference. Just about any conference that you're aware of that UOG is involved in, these people help with. And so the funds, so this last conference was several $100s a ticket to be part of the conference. So that would be non-appropriated money. Some of that goes to support GLE, and then they wind up generating at least $400,000 a year over and above their expenses that go to university non-appropriated funds. So that allows things like professional development, anything that, there are a lot of things that we don't do. We have nothing that we put on the general appropriation. So travel is, I think, entirely non-appropriated funds, those kinds of things. So,
And then non-appropriated funds still follow the procurement process, correct? Any funding that you okay, good. And then the PIF that you talked about, you said it generates about $400,000, is that what you said?
so that's just GLE, just an example.
Okay, but that's not consistent, right? It all depends on how much sales are going through or that you were talking about, so it's really not consistent.
It's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So it is consistent?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Okay, that's
between
good to know.
400, 450, they're pretty good at generating.
I'm sorry, but you mentioned WERI, but you didn't give me a price tag. How much was that?
$250,000.
$250,000,
Yep.
okay. In the ARP funding report that we receive monthly from the governor's office, there's some encumbrances and expenditures in there. The University of Guam only received $48,668 based on this report. However, when I was looking at your presentation here, it says American Rescue Plan, HEERF distribution, it's showing more funding. So which is the reality here? The report, or how much did you really get from ARC funding from the 500 and 500 was it additional funding? Oh, I went like that.
There were some separate funds to the governor to spend on education and at any level. So, and every governor was given I forgot what the amount was, but there was some funding from governors to invest. Do you know what she did with it?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure what you're...
So this is funding, what we're showing is the funding that we got directly as an institution.
I
And then
see.
the governor, different agencies, the governor's offices also got money that was earmarked for education that they could spend on whatever they wanted to spend.
I understand, like the SEEF or something that, special, okay, so it's totally different. So far then, of the ARP funding that the governor received, $578 million, UOG has only received $48,668 based on this report.
That's
correct? And what do you use that $48,000 for? I mean, it's so minimal for such a huge...
Well, yeah, we've been granted more than that. And so it's well over $1 million that we've been granted. And so the funds have been encumbered, but we haven't yet been able to draw them down. So we have gotten more money from the government than 48,000.
Okay, I'd really like to see some numbers,
Okay.
on
We'll
this,
get that to
because
you.
it's kind of confusing. We're looking at a report that's given to us monthly, and I understand this art funding is a little bit different. It's through grants, and there are several grants out there, exceeding the $600 million that's been given to the governor. So I guess we'll leave it at that, and hopefully look for some kind of chart, show us exactly how much is the grant which you go after or given to the governor to give to education versus this money that we are getting a report on. Have you had the opportunity to look at the infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed recently for any kind of funding under there that you might go after? Have you looked at it?
So we do anticipate some, and I was in DC recently meeting with various agencies, including the FAA, Department of Homeland Security, Department of the Interior, USDA, some others. So they're all talking about the potential for funding, and so there's a lot. My own feeling is that we have some great potential for significant investments in Guam and the region, and even some cooperative kinds of things, applications among CNMI, Guam, and the region, because the FAS states will also have access to some as well. So I think there's a lot of potential there. So,
So you have looked at them. Thank you very much for that too, because there are great potentials in there with the amount of money. It's not only the $190 million that is earmarked for Guam, but there's other, funding behind that, but they're competitive grants. And even grants that all you have to do is fill out an application and you're going to get it too. So appreciate the work that you're doing looking into that. Okay, that's pretty much it. I really appreciate your time in answering my questions. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to ask them.
thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Tyree. Madam Speaker, Doris Sherlai, you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for those who made their presentations today. Sorry I had to listen to it via virtual, but I'm glad to make it here for the questions part. And so according to the spreadsheet that OFB passed out, there's UOG is asking for $12.9 million more than the governor requested for UOG, if I understand this correctly. And so that's something, if we're going to give UOG what they want, we're going to have to cut from the governor's allocations $12.9 million. And then this also is from the general fund, 11.4 million more than what was allocated last year. I see a bulk of it, probably operations, this $11 million difference in operations. And I wanted to ask you if you could clarify, so according to this spreadsheet, Weary's request is 358. But I think but on your budget requests, it's 398 in your budget documents. Is that correct?
You're
think
saying
so.
358 versus 398?
Yeah. Because it was 398 last year, and it looked like from your budget requests, it's the same request this year for Weary, but this spreadsheet shows less.
Yeah, I believe it is the 398.
Maybe. Okay, and then just wanted to ask then. So, and most of the questions have already been asked regarding the scholarships. Thank you for those improvements and the additional scholarships that were able to be allocated to those priority areas. Thank you. The 275,000 for the Board of Regents scholarships, these are for those who had already been awarded multi-year scholarships. So to continue them costs 275,000.
That's the anticipated amount.
Okay. For 1 year.
That's correct.
All right. And then you said earlier in your testimony that UOG did not receive the 3.4 million for the cultural repository.
That's
right?
true,
Did not
yes.
receive it. Okay, so at the last budget hearing, I think we talked about that UOG had raised tuition by 5% in August 2021. And so I wanted to know if UOG anticipates raising tuition again this year, or when's the next anticipated tuition increase?
Yes, Senator. So Madam Speaker, we've been able to offset that increase with the rescue funds. So that's part of what we've suspended some of that during the period. It's part of our college affordability initiative, and so we anticipate just continuing on this path. We're trying very hard to remain. Right now we're the second least expensive land grant university. Only the University of Wyoming is cheaper. So we would like to be as affordable as possible. And the College Affordability Initiative is even more important now in the aftermath of this pandemic. So we used to be just under 50% Pell eligible, and I think the current figure is about 61%, so we've had a significant increase in that. An advantage we have is that the Pell Grant itself is getting a $400 increase, so that will help us in some ways. There's, of course, conversation in Congress and the White House about a significantly bigger increase in the Pell, so maybe there's even some more hope there, but that would also help us a lot more. So.
If the Pell Grant increases, you might be able to increase tuition, you're saying, and that would be covered by their Pell Grants?
So just being able to have more Pell Grants enables more students to afford college. So it actually turns out for many students, tuition isn't the big issue. It's living costs, it's transportation, it's child care, that kind of stuff. So the Pell Grant, the more of a Pell Grant that you can use for those other things besides tuition makes college more affordable. So the whole college affordability picture, I think nationally we're all becoming much more aware of, it's much more about living than it is about the tuition, whatever the tuition is.
All right, yeah, thank you. Can you just please maybe clarify what you mean by you suspended that tuition? That 5% tuition increase?
So the scale changed, back then, but we've been part of what our institutional portion that has gone to students has been rebating, basically not charging the increase. So officially, the scale is increased, but the effect on individual students is that it wasn't. And we've also included some other fees that we charge normally to try to make it, to help people through the pandemic recession, is trying to reduce some of those additional fees.
So the tuition increase went into effect, but you've rebated some of that through ARP funds?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what happens this year?
So we'll keep going as long as we can on the rescue funds.
You still have some?
We have some, and then we're allowed to spend them up until, I think, June of '23. So we have to figure out what will happen, what we can afford to allow to happen during that time. So.
All right, and are we talking about, also in addition to Senator Taitaqui's question, your presentation regarding American Rescue Funds? So you've received, looks like 13.2 million institution share, 10 million student share, but the 13.2, that's what you're talking about? That's what you're using?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. So you see the 3.2 million right under that is
for reimbursement.
Rebates and reimbursements.
Okay, so then this is spread out from FY20 through 2022, but you're saying you still have some of this money left?
We do.
Okay, then, and that will cover, so you don't expect tuition, does the scale anticipate tuition increasing this year?
No.
Okay. The new scale that you adopted, okay.
It's still the old scale.
All right. Are rebates given to all students or just based on need? How does that work?
So the rebates are provided to all students, but we have additional funding that we provided for the CARES emergency grant for need-based funding. I think that's right. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. The last year, you announced that you were receiving an $8.6 million grant, I think, from the U.S. Economic Development Administration to build that nursing facility. Can you just provide an update? And will this facility increase the amount of nurse graduates? How do you expect that to affect the number of nurse graduates we can anticipate?
Yes, ma'am. So the right before in the semester that we started the lockdowns, the spring of 2020, the nursing program admitted an unusually large class of 40 students. So that's the big increase. That group is graduating next month. That's why we have this significant increase in the number of nurses. The nursing faculty and staff, as everybody knows, has been working heroically during the last 2 years. And so the classes they've admitted more recently are closer to where they have been before because they just can't handle it. You know, it's just too much to be teaching this much larger class. So outside the context of the COVID pandemic, the limitations on the nursing production of nurses is faculty and facilities. So in terms of faculty, we've been very pleased to hire 2 new faculty. So in general, we feel like we're pretty solid in terms of the faculty. It's a great, great faculty. Now the limitation is facilities. So we anticipate this EDA grant, the first time that we've gotten an EDA grant, for $8.6 million will give us 12,000 square foot addition, essentially a whole separate building, but kind of connected in front of the current facility. That will solve the facilities issues, and we can really ramp up. So I mentioned the 40, that's what we can get to. We can get to 40, maybe 50. That's kind of the number, and that would really be a significant increase over the low 20s, 22 or so that we tend to graduate. So that'd be a significant increase in our capacity. So yes, ma'am, the facilities will be a game changer for our capacity for generating more nurses.
Okay, I guess, yeah, I'm still, you've answered all my questions so far. I'm still concerned about the difference in the governor's request versus your request and how we're going to deal with that. But thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to also recognize Senator Blas has joined us. Senator Brown, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Certainly good morning to you, Dr. Kreis, and the members of your team from UOG. I wanted to ask, in terms of your student population, I guess just at least maybe the last 3 years, certainly we know we've had to deal with the COVID, and I don't know how that's impacted your number of students. Certainly, I know you're doing what you can to accommodate teaching through this process, but on average, what has been the student population over the last 3 years? Are you seeing a decline in the number of students that are enrolling or staying in the university? And where are you now with your current student population?
Yes, ma'am. I think Dr. Enriquez can answer that. But in general, nationally, we're all down 1 million college students. It varies by institution, but one of the major impacts of the COVID pandemic is this tremendous drop in the number of people pursuing degrees, and so there's a general, so we're down too, and I think Dr. Enriquez might know more about specifics.
Yes, thank you. So we've tracked since prior to the pandemic, fall to fall, since fall of 2019, we saw a 13% decrease. Spring to spring, since spring 2020, I think up until this spring, we've seen a 10% decrease. What has transpired since we started tracking the decline is that weekly calls by all the units, calls by our Enrollment Management and Student Success Division have been made to find out what is going on and what additional support these students require. And so we learned over the 2.5-year period that initially it was just fear, and then it was financial concerns, and then it was, oh my gosh, I've got to take care of, my younger siblings because, my mom has to work, or gee whiz, we're all studying and working remotely from home. It's too much. Or my loved one passed away. So there are a whole variety of reasons. What we did in the meantime, as we received these HERF and American Rescue Plan funds, is to try to prep the institution to provide more support. We recognized there were behavioral health type of support needs in addition to financial needs. More recently, because we received from the U.S. Department of Education the Strengthening Institutions Programs funding, which is a multi-year, 5-year fund to stand up our Triton Advising Center. And within that particular hub, we have academic advisement, financial advisement, as well as career advisement, sort of tackling from all ends and making sure that we had additional advisors available working in concert with the academic schools and colleges advisement staff so that we have more of these wraparound services. And enhance recruitment efforts, diversifying our student market to bring the numbers up. As of fall of last year, we saw 600 plus new students, of which over 400 were incoming freshmen and 200 plus were returning students who had stopped out from years past. So there's very concerted effort. There are financial literacy seminars that are ongoing out of our Triton Advising Center, the College Affordability Initiative, married with the efforts from the Triton Advising Center, working in concert with our UOG Financial Aid Office, has really made great strides. I mean, we were concerned when we moved from the first year of the pandemic to the second because we did not see double-digit declines as yet. But tracking this most recent academic year, it's the first time we've seen the double-digit decline. And we expect with over 80% of our classes returning in person in the fall, with the rest already approved online and hybrid course offerings, that the numbers will go back up, including, of course, more assurances that it is really safe to return to campus, in addition to all the other online support that we're already giving students.
So on average, what is your student population now?
The population of the student?
Yeah, just what's your average amount of students?
Right. So in years past, we've always averaged over 3,000. So it would range anywhere from 3,300 to maybe 3,600. In the spring, what we call Fanumnakan, it's usually lower. This spring, it's roughly about 2,875. This is the lowest we've seen it, and certainly, we hope that, we know that retention obviously is a strength that we're seeing increase. Graduation rates, just to give you some context, back in our previous WAS accreditation visit, our graduation, which was based on 6 years degree completion rate, was 27%. As of fall of 2021, because we track by 6-year cohorts, it went up to 41.2%, which is phenomenal, and it speaks to the fact that we are doing the right things and we're continuing to improve on that. So I would not worry about the 2,875 because I know that that number is going to increase substantially by next spring.
And with the profiles of the students that were not returning, did it make any difference between freshman level to senior year, or any significant
so you can imagine
issues at any grade level of not returning back at this time?
So there are a variety of reasons, as mentioned.
No, I understand. I'm just in terms of the numbers per the different grade level. Did you see more in your freshman class?
I don't have the exact data, but we can get that to you, Senator. Okay. You can imagine the freshmen since fall of 2020 had never stepped on campus. Mm-hmm. So, that is part of the contributing factor as well. I may as well just take online courses at UH Manoa because they're online anyway. And so we see that the the online competitors really had a great advantage because the fact that they were just accessible to our folks, and a number of them had transferred out for that very reason.
And with regards to the students that are on campus, what is the percentage of classes actually happening on campus versus online?
Currently, gosh, I don't have the exact percentage. It's not substantial because, as you know, a number of faculty were still concerned about returning in person for a variety of reasons.
I have to ask a question because we have children that are in school that have been in school for quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
University level grown adults, you're going to have to explain that to me. Why do we not have regular classes at the university? I don't understand that. I really don't understand that.
Right.
I mean, if we're expecting students to go back to high school and middle school and elementary school, but not at the university where we have grown adults, I really have a big question mark because I appreciate, online learning, but it's definitely not the same effect as being in a classroom.
Right. And I appreciate that concern, Senator. It's the same concern that I shared with you over a year ago with regard to if the kids can do it at GDOE, why can't we? So there are a variety of reasons. The spatial distancing was one, the willingness, the readiness of our faculty to return into the classroom, that was key. And those who are willing to come back in, of course, we schedule those in person. But
I'm dumbfounded, Dr. Enriquez. I'm dumbfounded.
Yeah. We'll have more than 80% of our
Dr.
students.
Christ, I'm sorry. We're paying for the substantial amount of the infrastructure at the university, and whether students are there or not with the instructors and the professors, I mean, that cost is still there.
Right.
At this juncture, it really is hard to understand why the university does not have regular classes with professors in the class and students in the class when we pretty much, throughout the island, have the ability to go anywhere and do anything, pretty much, aside from distancing. The classes in the schools for students have not changed. I don't see how it's any different with the university. I would assume adults would be a little more responsible. But you're asking us for all this. You're asking us for even more money to run the university, and yet, we're hearing that we don't have regular classes happening at UOG, and that to me is a bit bothersome. Why not? And I'm sorry, professors are not quite sure they want to come into class to teach? What the heck is that?
So we have 80% of the classes are scheduled to be face-to-face in the next semester. This semester started at the height of the Omicron surge, so there was, we remained in our relatively tight, but we were teaching at least a third of our classes last semester face-to-face, and a third of them were a hybrid where they're 1 day a week, they're in person, 1 day they're remote, and then another third was online. And before the pandemic, we were doing about 15% of our total classes offerings were online, including one entire degree program that was entirely online. So some of that percentage is, it's by design because we know that online teaching is advantageous to a lot of different kinds of people depending on their issues, childcare being one of the big ones. So being able to access higher education and take care of your family is a real advantage. I think we've all learned from the pandemic that there are things about face-to-face interaction. I think our Island Sustainability Conference last week was a great example. Everybody was just so excited to be in person, and we remembered all kinds of things that happen in person that we'd kind of forgotten, the kind of problem solving, the ideas, just the kind of little debates and things. So I think we're all more conscious of the value of face-to-face, but we still have, and we anticipate having a lot more online capacity going forward. I anticipate even for fully face-to-face classes, the experience of 2 years of online means a lot more distant kinds of things, internet materials and techniques and things will be suffused throughout our face-to-face classes as well. So I think, it'll feel a lot like normal, I think, come August when we start the Fonet Sana.
I appreciate all that, but when I see private institutions that because they have to survive on the revenue that they receive and they have been able, granted they could be smaller institutions, but they've been able to respond fairly quickly to provide in-class education, to hear that our higher, it's disappointing. I mean, I understand the value and the outreach of, we could sit in our offices and do virtual and never leave our office. I can appreciate all that, but we still have the infrastructure at the university. I mean, I would not want to see us being expected to pay for all that, and yet, we're going to do, or maybe it's the wording. Maybe I didn't like the phrase about, our professors, I expect instructors and professors to teach. That is their job. I expect that. So if there's hesitancy on their part to go into the class because of, the virus, I don't understand how we're able to do, and even with the Department of Education, with all the challenges they've had, because I'm not happy with the fact also in their response time, because when I see others do it with far less resources, including financial, and they're able to execute and do in a safe environment and be able to outreach to the children and do the teaching that they need to do. And yet I see institutions that have the luxuries many don't, and we're not seeing that. If you want to go into virtual learning and a certain percentage of your education is that on certain courses, wonderful. But to have the bulk of your teaching not happening in the classroom at this time, when we'll see, a few weeks away, maybe from totally going back to some sense of normalcy, it's hard to expect us to keep funding it. And especially when as the speaker had asked questions, I mean, you're looking 10, 11, 12 million dollars more this upcoming fiscal year. I mean, what world are we living in? To be quite frank, Dr. Kreis, I mean, I love the university. I'm not wanting to support UOG, but at the same time, it's hard to feel that sense of, oh, wow, and, look at all the efforts UOG is making when, I'm hearing, maybe professors don't want to go in the classroom because they're afraid of, but they can be everywhere else, just not in the classroom teaching.
I should point out that students are also voting with their feet. So there are quite a few students who aren't interested in close contact with other people. So there's some of that. And then I can point out that many aspects of the university carried on right through even the tightest of the lockdown phase. So all of our research funding, we continued all of that through the entire last 2 years. So there's been a lot of research that has been carried on, a lot of laboratories, other things that are, if you think about the entire nursing program, the entire ROTC program, those carried on fully in person in all the ways that they needed to all the way through. So I'd say the story at UOG is that there's a lot of different things going on depending on the need. And we actually did a study in CNAS of the possibility of transmission inside a classroom or inside a laboratory. And we found so long as everyone remains masked throughout the experience, we've detected no transmission within a classroom or a laboratory. So we actually changed our procedures for face-to-face classes where there is a positive case. So before we were kind of putting the whole class into remote as soon as there was a single positive case. But after we did the study, we realized, we don't have to do that. Inform everybody that there was a positive, but we've not had any transmission. So I think there's been a lot of really tremendous work at the university to deal with that. And I think there's a bit of a difference with college students versus K through 12 students. There are issues about child care, and the economy and so on they're not the same kinds of pressures, I think, that, where we really can be a little bit more flexible to accommodate students who don't, because a number of our people in our community have immune challenges, other health issues, and so on that put them at more risk. So providing options for people to have their education remotely is a value. And we're, in our decline in the student enrollment in the last couple of years means we're trying really hard to accommodate all of the different kinds of interests. And so there are a lot of students who want face-to-face, they want to get back together. Our charter day was a great success, and quite a few of the students, including almost every student who organized the thing, had never seen a face-to-face charter day, and they were so excited about that. So we recognize that, but then we've also got to sort of accommodate people who are concerned, and we had a pretty bad run of the Omicron surge here, and so we're just coming to the bottom of that slide. So I think the university has done. People, students, faculty, staff have done a tremendous job during this whole experience, and we've learned a lot. And I think we're trying really hard to find all the silver linings and make sure that we carry on the things that we've learned from this experience, including this capacity for not only online classes, but even online elements added to face-to-face classes. And even the possibility of hybrid and all that has really enhanced our educational quality, I think, so.
You know, I appreciate all that, Dr. Kreis, but at the same time, I think I have a higher expectation in terms of having more in-class. Otherwise, you know, what parts of the campus are you going to shut down? Because that's expensive infrastructure. And I understand that there are challenges. Life brings challenges. And you know, to what degree do you bend and shape to accommodate every need? It's not always possible to do that. But like I said, if other institutions can do it and do it successfully, I'm a little surprised with regards to this specific issue that the university doesn't have more in-class activity. Otherwise, I want to get that clarified because it is expensive infrastructure. Even if there are no classes up there over the last 2 years, you still have to pay to maintain that facility. So it'll be good to know, you know, in this upcoming, now that we're upcoming with the new school year, are we going to see more in-class? Probably the thing that bothered me is the comment, well, it's our professors that, you know, don't want to come into class. I hate hearing that.
As well.
I mean, I would expect that our professors would want to come into class to teach.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, don't be a professor.
Professors and students are interested, so, and they're, you know, they have concerns. Everyone has different kinds of concerns. And 80%, with 80% face-to-face come August, I think it'll feel very similar. Right now, it's 2/3 of our classes are either face-to-face entirely or hybrid, which is roughly half face-to-face. So that's, you know, it feels pretty, you know, similar to pre-COVID now, and I think come August it'll feel much more so. Well,
I certainly look forward to that. I mean, I understand you're going to have maybe certain classes and opportunities where you're going to get a bigger audience wanting to participate online. Mm-hmm. I can appreciate that. But again, I just, you know, you want the university to be the leader, not falling behind the class. And when I see others, as I've said, I've seen private institutions do it successfully without having anybody infected, be able to go to school and do what they need to do. And yet I see the government, one, DOE is a whole other story. I don't know if it's too large an operation that it's not able to adjust and function as it needs to, but I kind of expect the university to even be ahead of that because you're not as large with regards to the amount of student population that you have to address. So I'm just bringing that up as a concern because I am surprised this morning to find out that the bulk of the classes are not actually in person. With regards to, I know that our other colleagues have asked with regards to ARP funding, are you anticipating any additional funding or are you simply looking at what funding you've received to carry over into this upcoming fiscal year? Do you anticipate being provided any additional funding for anything specific the university may need?
I don't anticipate further rescue funds from Congress. I don't think so, yeah.
And do you have a breakdown of what the you know, because the administration still to this day has not provided the legislature or the people of Guam with a breakdown. I know we have to do it by legislation now to get that information. I don't know why we need to do that, but it's not been forthcoming. But for the university specifically, do you have your breakdown on exactly what areas of funding that, you know, the federal funds have been used for, mm-hmm. just so that we and the public will know how those funds have been spent?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we'll get that for you, Senator.
I appreciate if you could provide it to the chairman and then he can help disseminate that to the rest of us. With regards to your buildings, of course, Weary and the Student Center, I mean, as we're finding, we're not able to use the ITC funding to do that. Does the university have any other contingency plans to address? Because I know you already have your existing loans. We did talk about that earlier this year to fund your 2 buildings. Are you looking at any other options for additional monies to accommodate the need? I'm sure the cost of construction has gone up, and how are you looking at addressing that so that you can move forward? Because we had asked earlier in the year, could you consolidate and maybe at least build one at this time, but you were telling me they're 2 separate funding mechanisms and it was not possible to blend that together. So do you have an update with regards to that?
Yes, ma'am. So the USDA required us to yoke those 2 projects. It's the School of Engineering and the Student Success Center, to yoke them together from the beginning, and we can't begin any part of it until the full funding is in place. Once we reach that phase, and that's where we are with conversations with various ways that we might be able to bridge that gap. Once we can start it, you know, then we can find other solutions later on, probably some more value engineering and that kind of thing to try to bring. But at the moment, we just need to get to that, you know, inflation-adjusted construction cost, and then we can begin the projects. And we can actually execute the projects separately, but we can't begin either one of them until they're the whole thing is in place. That's been one of the challenges of this source of funding. So,
And Senator, we've been doing everything, looking for, other plans, and so we've had a lot of discussions with the governor also that if funds from the legislature don't materialize, what would be our next step? And so we've had some good discussions in that way also. So we're looking at everything to address that.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I just want to see if you can have viable funding. I think that's what we want to see. And obviously, EITC, unfortunately, did not turn out to be that. Going back to WERI, I don't know what it is, but I really like WERI. I see that there's a decrease this year with regards to 40,000 for the hydrogeologic survey. Is there any particular reason for that decrease from what has been provided in this previous year?
Yeah, the number...
And then 9,000 for the monitoring program?
Yeah, we may have a mistake on a supporting document, but we're seeking 398, the same amount that we did in the prior year.
Okay, you can repeat that so our chairman can hear it, right? Make sure we get them to correct that number?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm happy to hear that. Then certainly I will push to see that we can fund that, because I think out of all the things our government does, definitely water research and also training new up-and-coming water experts and hydrogeologists is very important. We kind of take for granted on Guam, but worldwide, the issue of water is a very, very, very big and important issue, and certainly the more that we can do to know and be prepared, the better. With regards to overall, I think those are my key questions with regards to your operations this year. Other than that, Dr. Christ, I mean, I appreciate your presentation. I appreciate your command of your overall operations of the university. Again, I just hope to see more students back in the class. It's just an expectation when so much of the island is getting back to some sense of normalcy. Thank goodness for that. We just want to see that at the university. I don't, and so does our public. I mean, I'd like to accommodate everybody, but it's not always possible. But thank you, and thank you for your presentation.
thank you, Senator Brown.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Blas, do you have any questions for the panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Christ, and other members. Welcome, and thank you for being here. Before I start, I'm just going to have to also, I have to agree with Senator Brown with some of the concerns of, you're asking for an increase, but then over the last couple of years, we didn't see a whole lot of activity, and I recognize a lot of the challenges that you had and stuff. Hopefully, let's water under the bridge, okay? And hopefully that over the next, semester or so, we do get back up to some normalcy with some silver linings and stuff. I think there was also some great possibilities and opportunities that presented itself over the last 2 years to expand, and I've got a couple questions with regard to that. So before I get on, with regard to a lot of the funding that you've received over the last 2 years, albeit, stimulus packaging and or funding opportunities, were any of those cost share or match requirement type fundings? I'm seeing no on one side and yes on another.
So we do have matching requirements for certain research grants, and it's often the land or the facility can wind up being the match. So there are examples of things where we have that, I think.
But of the emergency funds that we got, there's no matching requirement.
No matching.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to look at is, fortunately, government has a tendency to be able to go out and find these new and innovative programs, and he says, okay, we'll fund you for the 100% for the first year, and then it's at a declining rate for the next 5 years, but then you're going to have to fund it 100% after, the 6th year on. We don't anticipate any of that with any of the funding that you've gotten recently.
We do have, our EPSCOR grant has some requirements that during the period of the grant, they will, in fact, maybe Rachel could explain better, but that there is going to be an ongoing requirement for us to maintain some faculty positions over the EPSCOR grant when the 5-year period is completed in 2025. If we're able to get another grant from EPSCOR, then I believe that's pushed out a little bit. So as long as we can keep performing we won't have that local obligation. Is that right?
Thank you.
We can hear you.
Pull it to you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Yes, we do. The grants that we received, the HERF grants, that they don't have any matching requirements, but we have been getting some research grants for many years that do have a local match requirement. Our land grants, like the Hatch and Smith Lever, we've been getting those for over 50 years, and they do have a local match requirement. Our C grant, we're about ready to get institutional status. That does require a 50% match. Our NSF and NASA EPSCoR programs, those also have a match requirement. It's 20%. And so we've been doing okay in the past few years, and for our NSF EPSCoR grant, part of the local match is we are doing graduate STEM tuition assistance program for our graduate students, which basically gives them a tuition relief so that they can attend and get their master's degree here at the university. So those are the only grants that basically have a local match.
Okay. Of the increase that you're requesting for this year, how much of that increase is relative or with regard to match requirements?
It's a few $100,000. I think it's just a few $100,000 is related to the match requirements.
Okay, is that enumerated specifically in the? And I mean, the reason why I'm bringing this up, okay, is look. We're going to be perfectly honest. We're going to go into a budget situation where we may have to, squeeze a nickel out of 2 pennies. And so we got to be very critical and it's very crucial for us to be able to look at these things. Okay. Obviously, I don't think there's not one senator that's sitting here that's going to say, that we don't want to fund it. It's just, can we fund it? All right. And so that's just an anticipation. All right. I have got to be perfectly frank and honest with that. So I anticipate looking at the enumeration of what those grants.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. With respect to the military buildup, I think there's been some ongoing discussions over the last few years about preparing for those positions that are going to be needed at Camp Blas. And whether or not we have a program, if you will, or some conversation of how we can prepare our students, or so that they can meet those at least those educational requirements when it comes to those positions that may be open. Where are we with that discussion?
I think Dr. Enriquez has it.
Yes, thank you for that question. The University of Guam, in addition to the Guam Community College, the Guam Department of Labor has been invited to conversations with DOD, specifically with their personnel, Division of Joint Region Marianas, and so forth, in light of their anticipated exodus of civil service personnel, obviously through retirement, through attrition of some sort. But what we've been able to gauge is that across the different professions, across the different professional degrees we already have at the University of Guam that support, whether it be in accounting, human resources, environmental science, computer science, cybersecurity types of training, the full gamut. It's very similar to what we were approached with during the early conversations of the military buildup years ago, where they were taking in contract specialist interns, and the University of Guam, through their graduates, their alumni, have been able to populate that. We called it the intern world once upon a time in the old OICC facility down at Naval Base Guam. We do have a number of our alumni who are currently employed as a result of the buildup, some of whom have returned But there are ongoing information sessions. The engineering degree was also an attraction to the NAFAC, Naval Facilities Engineering. And so we've been able to see a lot of interest in that regard. So this is an ongoing active engagement. We have a very robust career development office and the efforts on tracking internship opportunities as well as employment opportunities across local, federal government, private, and non-profit organization needs. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm specifically speaking to those that we anticipate, those, once the buildup is done, once these, the infrastructure has been put in place and now they have to populate it with warm bodies. Whether or not we do have an active engagement program and how we can be able to populate those warm bodies with UOG graduates, okay, or UOG students, in intern positions.
Right, right. So, as you know, the salary scales outside of Government of Guam in the private sectors are relatively low. And so as these civil service types of opportunities open up, we see a number of our civilians actually transitioning to these federal types of positions. We've seen that happening, for example, with the DODEA teaching positions and the GDOE and private school teachers transitioning to that. We're going to see increasingly more because, as you know, we also lose our civilian prospective employees here on island to the military. College graduates are enlisting in the military, and because of the state of our economy and certainly the relatively low opportunities for gaining favorable types of income to support their respective livelihoods. So you'll see a lot of that transition from the civilian off-base towards on-base types of opportunities. And the university obviously is always prepared to feed our anticipated graduates as well as our interns towards these different needs. We are in contact with a number of the federal agencies, especially the military bases, and in light of the Ben Blas Marine Corps base and their respective civilian hiring needs, that we're prepared to feed into those as well.
Okay, so this actually segues into my next question. And I appreciate your presentation that there was an unusually high graduation rate the last. Did I hear that correctly? 27 to 41%.
We have improved our retention and graduation rates quite a bit. So
Great.
you're actually seeing recent graduation groups. We've had several record numbers where we've had the largest numbers. So we're doing a better job of keeping people, retaining them, and getting them through the program. So as for numbers to track, I think my feeling is I'm more interested in that number than just the total body count. I think that the enrollment. The enrollment's always in the context of how well you're getting people through. So we've really improved our capacity to retain and graduate students. Okay,
and so I can appreciate that now you've got a higher graduation rate, but now, it's the step. Your graduations are normally on Sunday, and my concern is now the Monday following. Okay, whether or not these graduation rates actually equate to now, jobs. Okay, and is there a program or do you have something that's in place that actually tracks or helps your graduates to transition from, now a UOG graduate to now a gainfully employed or a successful or up-and-coming business person?
So I think Dr. Enriquez can add to that, but we do have a robust career center, and that's part of the Triton Advising Center that Dr. Enriquez got a multi-million-dollar grant to establish.
Yes. So the academic programs, the academic units are charged to track their graduates because of the regular program review report, and so that is very helpful for the professional degrees. such as nursing, social work, accounting, and others. They track because a number of these lead to certification, certification for job placement. Through our Triton Advising Center, the $2 million 5-year grant, one of the one of the major components is the career advisement, to which internships are being tracked across all of the academic units. And with the new medium Handshake, which is an online portal that provides the opportunities for employment, as well as provides students an opportunity to place their information. That has become a much more improved tracking mechanism for our University of Guam students and graduates.
Okay, I appreciate that because, you know, I remember years past, okay, hopefully it's not the practice anymore. You know, a guy comes out with a psychology degree and all of a sudden is working as an auto mechanic.
Yeah.
Okay, and so, you know, we want to be able to match the job to the degree. So I appreciate that. There was a discussion earlier with regards to your online enrollment, okay, and you had to rely on that over the last couple of years. But I think one of the silver linings, or one of the great things about being able to go through that whole exercise is the possibility of expanding that online enrollment to off-island. Is there an effort, or, you know, I mean, you see that constantly, you watch TV, you got the University of New Hampshire and Phoenix University. Is one of these days, am I going to see the University of Guam?
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Senator. We do have already approved by WASC fully online master's degree programs. And so we find those in education as well as in business because we recognize the huge Chamorro or Guam diasporic community off island and their desire for programs such as Micronesian studies, Chamorro studies, or even just enrichment types of offerings. We have now made a more proactive stance with regard to getting as many of our courses approved for online delivery so that we can satisfy the proposal that is required to go to our WASC accrediting body in order to get that approval. We recognize as well that in our surrounding region, in the 2-year regional colleges, there is a demand for the upper level degree offerings. So we have already an MOU with the Northern Marianas College to offer the upper level courses in criminal justice in order to help those with associate's degree achieve that baccalaureate degree. We've already graduated our first cohort. A number of them have graduated with honors. We also are working with Palau Community College and partnering with them for an education baccalaureate degree. I believe it's in special education. And we're also looking at perhaps offering the Micronesian studies fully online. A lot of the Herculean efforts are done by the faculty in order to work on that. The Master of Accountancy, which is a graduate accounting program, is already on the agenda for the Academic Personnel and Tenure Committee of the Board of Regents. And once that is cleared and approved, then we will start entertaining applicants for that particular program as early as this fall or Fanusan 2022 semester. So we know that there are online competitors. We recognize the demand for specific types of offerings, and in return for those courses to which we do not have sufficient faculty, we are part of the WICHI network so that our students may avail of enrolling in courses that can transfer back in to complete their degree. So a lot of activity going on, many hands around all of this, and certainly we're always very mindful of making sure that we're in compliance with our accrediting body.
Okay. Actually, there's a few more questions I have, but I'm going to go ahead and, these are questions that we can probably have offline, but the last one is, recognizing that the University of Guam is basically a research facility. Do you have a research repository?
Well, first, Senator, I would say we're really mainly we're a comprehensive institution. So teaching's really at the center of our enterprise. As a research institution, we have really come up. We're doing really high-level research, and part of this effort is to spread that culture of research to undergraduates and to disciplines that have not been, up till now, particularly attractive to external funding. So I wouldn't say we're primarily a research institution. We're primarily a teaching institution, heavily undergraduate, 25 master's degree, 25 majors, 11 master's degrees. That's our main function. But a lot of the faculty are engaged in research and increasingly engaging their students, including undergraduate students, in the research enterprise. So.
And I bring this up because it has been a discussion that has been brought to me, or concern that has been brought to me over the last few years, on, quite honestly, the reluctance of some of the faculty who supposed to be engaged in research and get monies to be able to do research, and there's no product.
Well, there's tremendous product from our research. Our
Okay.
research is it is very high quality research.
So the question
and the
that I
fact that we never return any funding, right? We consume it all. We've had renewals. The $20 million renewal of the EPSCoR grant is tremendous. I mean, it's one of the things, even inside the university, I think some people aren't quite aware of how high level this is. So we're one of the smallest universities that receives research funding, but we're in the top 35% of American universities in terms of the funding from the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health. It's something that we really should celebrate. That's an amazing accomplishment.
And I think that you brought up the point. It's probably a lack of awareness, and probably the lack of awareness is because how do you access it? Where can you see that the research was done and you can read about the research? Okay, and which is why I ask, as far as what the repository is, there a repository so that we can see? I mean, it's one thing to say we lead the nation, or we lead institutions of our kind in this area, but then when we ask for it, can't find it, or we don't know where to start.
So
okay?
So that's a good point, and I'm very pleased with our marketing and communications team is really focused on trying to tell those research stories in a much more coherent way. We're actually getting 94% of our press releases are being picked up by the local media, which is an astronomically high percentage. So they're doing a really good job of providing the kind of information that our local media really need and what the reading public wants to access. So there has been a consistent effort to tell the research story. So you see the example of the graduate student who's going on to do the deep sea study at Palmyra Atoll, and you see the work that's going on in cancer research. You see all of the work that goes on in Cedars. So they've attracted $125 million over 25 years to provide direct services to the disabled community of Guam and the region. So telling that story, one of the challenges is, some of the stories, it's a little bit hard to explain to people, but some like the coconut rhinoceros beetle story, brown tree snakes, the fire ants, there's some that have really direct relationship. You see all of the extension activity, and the extension activity of our land grant operation is extending that research to the public. So all of the effort on aquaculture, the island sustainability, the G3 efforts with the community centers in each of the villages to do the aquaponics system with the lettuce and the tilapia. Those are examples of the research coming to life for people so they can see that. And that's really at the core of that land grant idea is we do the research with students. Students are being educated through the research, and then extension and all these outreach activities are trying to bring that to the public to help solve problems and make things better. So.
Okay, great. Well, lastly, you brought this up. If there's a way you can get to your research that's going down to the Palmyra Atoll, Can you ask her to find out how an island with 100,000 seabirds and 12 scientists is an incorporated territory of the United States as opposed to Guam being unincorporated?
It's one of the many bizarre things in
I'm
our
just joking,
structure.
okay.
I agree, it is a strange thing, yes.
See, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Senator.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Thank you, my colleagues, for participating in this budget hearing. Thank you to the panel, Dr. Kreis and your staff. The committee will conclude this budget hearing. The committee will continue to receive testimony for the next few days. And please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operations, Appropriations, and Housing, and submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Augustine@gmail.com or to my office located at the Rand Care Building, second floor, Suite 3, 761 South Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Si Dios mercy for your attendance and participating in today's hearing. And for those at home, thank you for watching. This budget hearing on Bill 276-36CR relative to the University of Guam is now adjourned. It is now 10:52. Please be safe and have a nice day. Take care.